Okay, apparently it's live now. Is it working now? One of the team members says it's working.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. That's great. Okay. Welcome everyone. Sorry about that. I didn't realize it wasn't connecting. Okay. Excellent. So Al-Faiz, Kareem, you can join us in the Zoom room. Okay. So it's all working now. Yeah. So today's topic, we're continuing with the first and the zero conditional. Hello, Stuti. Good evening, Swala. Okay. So yeah, we'll continue with that. So did anyone have any other questions? So I just answered Lakshi's question for those of you that couldn't hear. She asked if we usually say I had paid or I have paid for something, and normally we say I have paid. So that's something that might be relevant to a lot of you. Whenever something has been done or was done in the past, but is still true today or is still true in the present, then using have plus the past participle is more common. Good evening, Wala. Good evening, Yatin. Okay. Excellent. So we're continuing with the zero and the first conditional. So we talked about that last class, on Tuesday's class. Peter says you're not audible. Okay, so hopefully you can hear me now. I'll try to talk louder. Aman says, is grammar really important for spoken English? That's a good question. So often the grammar or the way that we speak is different than written English, but the basics, the key grammar is still important. So there are things that we say differently. There are ways of speaking that are a little bit different, but knowing the basic grammar is important. But spoken English, very quick spoken English, very informal spoken English will be quite different. We'll use things that might not make sense based on formal grammar. So it's the balance of knowing informal phrases if you want to practice conversational English, of being able to understand fluent speakers talking very fast. Basic grammar is important, but not always for conversational English, not the more complicated grammar. So the basic grammar is important. So I hope that answered your question. Does anyone else have any questions from the topic last week? We're going to continue that. Today, do some more practice exercises on it. Pratiyash says, no, grammar is not important to speak English well. I think the basic grammar is important. The basic grammar of the language is how that language. Shirley, do you have a question? Okay. So basic grammar is important. It's the logic of that language. Someone understands you based on the grammar, the basic grammar. That's how we communicate the idea. But the more complicated grammar isn't always important. And sometimes some phrases, some informal phrases won't always follow grammar. So it's the balance. Yeah, Shalesha, do you have a question?
Ma'am, how can we make, how to fill our vocabulary bank?
So if you want to expose yourself to more vocabulary, or do you want to learn more vocabulary?
Learn more vocabulary words.
So I've talked about this method before, that it's always best to know the words well before just learning lots of words. So it's more about knowing the ones that you want to learn, a couple of words, a few words, and understanding their meaning very well, connecting the meaning with the words you already know. So are they similar? Do they have a similar meaning to any words that you already know? And learn the way to use them appropriately. So we have collocations. You might know what a collocation is already. It's where we use words commonly with other words. So a verb commonly used with another noun or with another phrase, things that we use together a lot. So sometimes it's really useful to know the way that we use a word. So rather than trying to learn lots and lots of words, focus on learning the few words at a time very well. And as you're doing that, while you're doing it, that will start building up your vocabulary, because to understand one word very well, you might need to understand others and the ways to use them. So I think start, I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome. And then also try to listen or read a lot in English, because then you see those words being used. That will expose you to lots of new words. Hi, Prakash, welcome. Hafez says you have a question, so you can join us in the Zoom room. I've sent you the invite link. You're a pro member, so you can join. Just click on the link that I sent you in the chat. Pratiyesh says the tense and passive is sufficient only. So the tense is very important for spoken English. I think the tense is very key. So the tense in English, English is one of the languages with the most tenses, because the tense does help somebody understand the meaning of what you're trying to say as well. Just like we talk about, just like when I answered Lakshmi's question about I paid or I have paid. When you say I have paid, it's relevant to now. I have paid. So you want somebody to know that the payment, the amount you paid, helps you do something now. I have paid. Somebody might ask, did you pay? I have paid. So tense is really important, Pratiyesh, you're right. The passive. I'm not sure what you mean by passive. So we have passive sentences where we change the order of the sentences. So the subject, the person who did something, isn't at the front, at the beginning of the sentence. So that's not so important for spoken English. So the tense is important, yes. I don't think the passive sentences are important. Hi, Manu, welcome. Welcome to today's class. Manu says, how the newborn learn to speak English. So by newborn, do you mean children, or do you mean people new to learning languages? Good evening, Imtiaz. So I'm from England. Mona says, how the newborn learn English in your country. I'm not quite sure if you mean people who are children or if you mean people learning English for the first time. Hi, Manisha. Dr. Vijendra Tak, veterinarian, says, what should we do to come up with ideas about what to speak during conversation? So for conversation, you can focus on phrases that respond to things. So how to respond to conversation. Are you expressing shock? Are you expressing curiosity? Are you expressing joy for somebody else? So how can you respond in different ways? Ways to ask questions as well. So I think more than thinking about what to say, you can find phrases for how to respond to conversations and how to ask questions to get further information or to show interest. Srimal says, brief summary for tenses. So that would take a long time, but a good summary to tenses is a great idea for a topic. I'll keep that in mind for future classes. Yeah, Alpha is if you have a question. So if you're in the Zoom room, you can click the link in the chat and then you can join the Zoom room. But if you have a question, you can write it in the chat if you don't want to join the Zoom room. Dr. Vehendra says, learning phrases. Yeah, so
Hi,
learning phrases. Hi. Do you have a question?
Hi. So what you are doing right now, like you are teaching something?
Yeah, so I'm going to teach a topic. I'm just responding to questions right now at the beginning.
Okay. Hi, I am new to your class.
Okay, welcome. Do you have a question?
Not yet. Actually, I have just joined and I was just wanted to see like what you are doing. Like I'm just curious to see like what you're doing. I wasn't able to see like you answering to the chats. You are giving us.
Right now I'm answering the chat. And also if anyone in the Zoom room, if you have a question, that's fine. Then we are going to talk about zero and first conditionals in about 5 minutes. We'll do a lot of practice with that. So right now I'm just answering questions.
So you teach generally like you teach grammar or you teach spoken English or something like this? Like
both. I try and do different topics. I try and do grammar that is important. And I focus on different topics, different and grammar. Namachan, do you have a question? Okay, so I focus on grammar in some weeks, some classes. Sometimes I focus on spoken English, do lots of practice speaking. I have done conversational English, practice with phrases to use. So a while back, about 2 months ago, we did conversational English, phrases that are useful for different reasons. So lots of different things, lots of different topics. But right now we're doing a grammar topic.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, so Lakshmi, I will make it bigger once we get to writing. Thank you for that. So this is my suggestion for things to learn when you want to focus on what to say in conversations. So responding to what someone says and asking questions. And it's putting less of the focus on you and asking questions. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Manisha says, do you have your own channel on YouTube? I'm setting it up. So I'll let you know when that's set up. Mayuri says, where are you from? I'm from England. Nihal says, speaking, writing, reading, listening. Watching is a key factor in speaking. So all those things give you different skills, listening skills, reading skills, writing skills. All those things help with your grammar, your words, and your vocabulary. Speaking alone is about having fluency, the ability to express yourself or explain yourself with the words you already know, and also about having good accuracy, understanding what you're saying, and being able to use it quickly. Okay. Ayosh says, which of the following is a water-soluble vitamin? That seems like a question you were given from something. So when we talk about water soluble, we mean it can dissolve in water. Something that is dissolvable. So it's able to dissolve, it's able to attach itself to water and break down. So that's what it means by water soluble. When you pour salt or sugar into water and you stir it for a long time, that's because it's dissolved. Okay. Okay, so let's begin with doing the practice for zero and first conditionals. Unless anyone else has any questions about that. Okay, excellent. So we're going to look at a practice letter to see how we can put in. Manisha says, what is your name? What is your YouTube channel name? So I haven't chosen the name yet. I will let you know when I've chosen it. And yeah, I'll let you know. I'll do different topics and similar topics to the ones that we've covered again. So it'll be a bit like revision. Okay, so let's just recap or summarize zero and first conditionals. So many of you are new. You didn't join in Tuesday's class where we talked about it. Many of you also were part of Tuesday's class, so you already know the main things that make something a zero and first conditional. So zero and first conditionals are sentences. They're the names for types of sentences that have a condition in them. So a condition is a requirement. Something that needs to happen. For something else to happen. So all of the sentences that are called conditionals, we imagine or we say when this thing happens, if this thing happens, then something else will happen. So we explain what will happen, what will be the effect of something else happening. So it's a way of explaining the effect of a condition, an effect of something else happening. So another way of thinking about conditionals, a different way, is cause and effect. So we can think of if something, then something else. But we can have this cause and effect in different moments of time. So the different conditionals are all about when in time are we talking about. So for the zero conditional, we're talking about in general. We're talking about all the time. So not one moment, all the time. It's in general. It's always true. So the zero conditional is for things that are always true. So we can talk about generalities, things that are always true. We also call them truths because they're always true. The first conditional is for things that will happen one moment in the future. So not things that are always true, things that are going to be true, things that are true in the future, in one moment. for a moment or a time in the future. It doesn't have to be for a short time. It can be for a time in the future. So we're talking about the future here. So that is the difference between the first conditional and the second condition. Sorry, the first conditional and the zero conditional. So if you didn't already watch Tuesday's class, I suggest that after this class, you watch Tuesday's class to summarize, because I went into more detail about the difference and how to form the first and the zero conditional. I'll quickly cover that now, but then we're going to do lots of practice. So for the first conditional, you say something like if. So we can use words like if or when. Those are the key words we need for the first condition, for the zero conditional. So if, when, something, then we need to have a comma. Something else happens. So usually we use the simple present. You can, sometimes use will. It's a bit more difficult to use will, a bit more trickier. It can sometimes make your meaning less clear. So you have to be sure that your meaning is clear, that you're talking about in general and not the future, to make it zero conditional. So you don't confuse somebody that you're talking about, whether you're talking about the future or in general. So that's how we form the zero conditional. The first conditional hopefully that's clear. Write it in a different color. The first conditional, we can use if again. If, sometimes you can say if something will happen. We don't, usually. Usually we use it with the present simple. Will is less common, so I wouldn't advise it. I think let's keep it as present simple in the practice. So if plus present simple, if it rains, then we need will, the verb, I will bring an umbrella. So that's the key. So we need the verb as well in the second part. So that's the basics. So we went into more detail on Tuesday's class. So if you have time, watch that. But we'll go through the formation of it while we're doing the practice questions. Okay, so let's start with this practice. So we have a letter written by somebody. Planning, they're writing to somebody who has planned to move somewhere, and they are also planning to move. So we're looking at the topic of moving and houses. So if there's any vocabulary you don't know, please ask, and that's the topic. Those are the words that we're dealing with. And they're writing about their plans. So their future plans and what is always true. So we need to use the first and the zero conditional to help them finish their letter. So you have to decide, is it the first conditional? Is it the zero conditional? And how do I form that? So let's practice. So if you think you know the answer, write in the chat. If you're in the Zoom and you want to say, let me know what you think the gap is. So this is the letter. Hi, Mickey. Thanks for your email. It's good to hear that you finally found a place to live. You've been looking for ages. The studio you found sounds perfect for one person. So this word studio, it's a type of place to live. Does anyone know what the requirements of a studio are? Why we call something a studio and not a flat or not an apartment? Does anyone know what a studio is?
Like there is a music studio, like where people come, come to practice something, like or teaching something. Like there is a studio where we can go and learn music. So that was a music studio, and in general, room where people live, it is a room. So I think this is the difference. I don't know the exact difference, but I think this is the difference.
Yeah, so there's more than one meaning for studio. So we talk about studio where activities happen. So an art studio, a music studio, a dance studio. Yeah, so it's a place where we do the activity. That's right. That's one meaning. Usually it happens in one room. So when we talk about a studio apartment, sometimes it's shortened to just a studio. Sometimes people say a studio apartment or a studio flat. It's a type of apartment or flat where everything is in one room. So the kitchen is in the same room as the bedroom, the living room. So it basically means it's all in one room. The bathroom might be separate. The bathroom is often in a separate room. That's the exception. But a studio flat or apartment is when the kitchen and the bedroom and the living area are all in one room. So it's basically one room and a bathroom. So if you see a studio to rent, that's what it means. It means it's one room, basically, and a bathroom. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. So you'll often see that when you have places to rent. So it's not a very commonly talked about thing in language in lessons, but it's very key if you're looking for apartments or flats in English. So yes, a studio flat or an apartment is one roomed flat with a separate bathroom. So when we talk about one room, we're not including. So it's one room. Okay, so this person is on their own. So he's saying it sounds perfect for one person. It's great that it's one person because that's just what you need if you're on your own. When you something, and we need the verb live, alone, you not need a lot of space. So this is our first conditional. We need to decide how to form this. So we need to decide, is it the zero conditional or is it the first conditional? Are we talking about something in the future or are we talking about a truth in general? Does anyone want to guess? Are we going to have to write the first conditional or the zero conditional?
Ma'am, may I?
Yeah, of course.
Ma'am, it's a zero conditional sentence.
Yeah, excellent. Zero conditional. Yeah.
And the verb will be when you leave alone, you not need a lot of space.
You do not need a lot of space. Excellent. Yeah. So we add that do so that we can have the not. If it was you need a lot of space, we don't use the do, or we don't need the do.
There is any difference between one BHK flat or a studio?
Between?
Like one BHK flat or a studio. Like we generally, differentiate flats, apartments, like it is one BHK, it is two BHK means two room set, three BHK means three room set. So can we like studio is a synonym of 1 BHK flat?
So
Or,
it's one. Mhm. It's
is
about.
it there is a difference?
So it's one room. So if somebody already says it's one room, then it's a studio. But sometimes they say it's one bedroom. And one bedroom isn't always a studio because sometimes the bedroom is separate from the kitchen. If you have a kitchen that's separate in its
Okay.
own room and a one bedroom that's its own room, that's not a
Okay.
studio. So it's
Okay,
still one
got it.
bedroom, but it's not a studio. A studio is just one room. The kitchen and the bedroom, everything is in one room apart from the bathroom.
Okay. Okay, now I got it. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Yeah, so excellent, Shalisha. So you pretty much got it right, the zero conditional. So we need the present, simple, that's the best. When you live alone. So here, when you will live alone, that doesn't work, even for the zero conditional. The will here doesn't work. So it's better just to use the simple present. So when you live alone, you don't need a lot of space. When you live alone, you don't need a lot of space. So if it was you need a lot of space, that would be fine. But because it's the negative, we need to add the do. You do not, or you don't. So we need to add the do when it's negative so that we can make it negative. That's when it's positive, we don't need the do. So excellent, Shalisa, well done. Very well remembered from last time.
Yeah, may I ask one question here?
Yeah, of course.
So instead of do not need, can it be need not? You need not a lot of space.
We'd rather say don't need. You need not. If you say to somebody you need not, it's a formal way of saying, of telling them that it's not necessary for them to do something. You're basically removing their responsibility. You're saying it's fine, that doesn't need to be done. You don't have to do that. So if I said to somebody, you need not worry, that's the more common way of using it nowadays. You need not worry. It's telling somebody that they don't have an obligation or they don't have to do something. It's the opposite of an order. It's kind of an order that's telling them not to do something. That's
Okay.
the only way that we use need not. It's a very formal, sort of archaic way. Archaic means an old-fashioned way.
Okay, here I have got another question. As you have written one sentence like you need not, right? So
Yeah.
can it be you need not to be worried? You need not to be worried, or you need not worry.
Worried. It's less common like that. You need not to be worried. You would rather say you need not worry. You need, that's much more common. But it's very old fashioned. So it's used not a lot at all. So I would say rather use don't. Don't worry about need not. People aren't going to use it in conversation, and they're very unlikely to use it even in formal writing.
Okay, thank you.
You might see it more in old-fashioned plays or theatre, things written from the 50s and before that, from the 1950s and before. You're not going to see it very commonly today. So it's not important to think about how to form that.
Okay, thank you. Please
Welcome.
continue.
Does anyone else have any questions? Jessica Ron, did you ask a question? I didn't see. Roman says in Britain, it's called a flat, in America, an apartment. Yeah, that's often the rule. You can use both, but it's more common in Britain to say flat, more common in America to say apartment. Where I am now in South Africa, we use both. So we use both the flat and apartment. So both works. So Jessica Ran asks how to improve speaking. So it's all about practice. Practice as much as you can, whenever you can. Talk out loud in English to yourself because you're using your brain muscles to practice. And when you have the chance, talk to anyone in English you can, even if they're not fluent in English. Sarika says, you have no need. Yeah, you can say you have no need of, if you're telling somebody. You need not. There's lots of ways to form it, but all of those are much more old-fashioned ways. You don't need is much more common to use now. Okay, excellent. So
I have another question for this second sentence from the top.
yeah.
It's good to hear that you finally found a place to live, right? So it is. So this sentence is, it is good or it was good?
It is good. It is good. Yeah. The reason it's definitely not it was good, because they're expressing their joy for someone else. So it is good for me to hear that you are happy. It is good to, it's like saying that it is good to hear that you are happy. You are always feeling that. So it's always in the present. Because if you say it was good to hear that you are happy, it's like you're no longer happy for them. You don't care anymore. So we always say it is good. It is good to hear. It is good to hear that you are happy. It is good to hear that you passed the test. If we said it was good, it's not about talking about the moment in time that we heard. It would sound like we aren't happy anymore, or it isn't good. So we're always expressing that we're happy, we're pleased for somebody when something goes well for them, when something good happens to a friend. So we say it is good, even if we heard about it a long time ago in the past. It's just a way of explaining we're still happy for them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, correct.
Ma'am,
Excellent. Yeah.
Rather than of using good to hear, can we say it's good to know that you passed the test or you finally found a place to live?
Yeah, it's good to know. It sounds like we are reassured by it. We feel maybe we were worried before, but we know now finally that they've done that. So you can use both. The meaning can be very similar. It depends how you use it, but there can be that subtle difference that one, it's good to hear, I'm so pleased for you, or it's good to know, I'm glad that you have passed the test. I was worried that you weren't going to. I'm relieved to know that you did pass the test.
All
Does
right,
that make
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But you can use both. Good to hear is more of a common phrase just to express that we're glad something happened, but to know it is like, sounds that there was a chance you didn't know it because you were waiting to hear and you were waiting for someone to tell you what happened to your friend, you didn't know, and you were worried about them. Does anyone else have any questions?
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome, Jake. I hope that explains it.
So we can also use I'm delighted to hear that you finally found a place to live.
That's even better. That sounds more positive. Yeah. So you can say it is good to hear that. That's positive. I'm delighted to hear. That's really positive. It's formal. I'm delighted. You might send that to somebody who is maybe younger than you, maybe a relative. I am delighted to hear. It's much more positive, but it's a little bit more formal. If it was a friend and you wanted to express that it's very positive, you might just say, I'm so glad to hear. That's very positive, but it's more informal. So this you might more say to a friend, I'm delighted to hear. You might say to a colleague or to somebody, a relative that you're not that close to. So it's much more formal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any questions? Shubham says how to improve in English. So lots of different ways to improve in any language. Practice in lots of ways: listening, reading, speaking, writing. Those are the 4 key skills that we think about with language learning. And you can practice all of those: reading, writing, even if you know you don't know a lot of vocabulary, practice writing with what you do know. What can you say? What can you express? That will help your speaking. Listening as well. You can listen to podcasts, to things that are just people speaking in English or the language you want to learn. So those are the 4 key skills we think of with language learning. And there are lots of different ways to improve, all different ones. Usually we talk about targeting a different skill. So that means focusing on one skill. So different practices usually target or focus on one kind of skill. Sometimes you will be using more than one skill, but usually it's something we can't practice on all 4 of those at once. So it's about different things: listening, speaking, reading things you can. Sarika says it's happy to hear that. So we don't say it is happy to hear that. It's a strange one. We say it is good to hear, but we don't say it is happy. Because happy would describe the emotion of a person. So we don't say it is happy. We can say I am happy. I am happy to hear. But we can say it is good because something can be good and it can be good. We say that film was good. It was good. I think it is good. But we don't say it is happy unless the it is a person. So it is good makes sense. It is happy doesn't. You're saying I am happy to hear. I am happy to hear that you found a place to live. Shubham says, tell me something about, okay, yeah. Okay, so let's do some more practices. Let's do the rest of the letter to practice. Okay, so we've talked about what a studio means. We've looked at the different ways. If anyone has any questions, please ask. Okay. So the next paragraph, Mark and I. So this is also a common error, and even native speakers get this wrong. Sometimes in speech, people would say me and Mark. That tends to be incorrect, but it's very common in speech. But it's more polite to always put the other person first. So Mark and I is much more polite and more grammatically correct. But in speech, you might hear younger generation saying me and Mark. But it's much more correct to say Mark and I. So Mark and I moved into our cottage last month. Does anybody know what a cottage is? Again, it's another kind of place to live. Does anyone know what makes a cottage a cottage? What is a cottage? Does anyone know?
It's a kind of home.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of home. What kind of home do you think? Can you guess maybe what makes a cottage a cottage? Do you think it's a flat? Do you think it's a house?
There's kind of studio apartments.
So it's not a studio, it's a type of house.
A lonely house among some forest, a house apart from your home. Lonely house, I think.
Ah, that's a good idea. No, it's the house that they live in. So it's a type of house. Does anyone know whether it's usually a big house or a small house?
A small house.
Yeah, excellent. It's usually small. It might be big compared to an apartment or flat, but compared to it, we wouldn't say it's a big house, but it might be quite reasonably sized, quite big. but we wouldn't describe it as big. It's a small house. Does anyone know if it's usually in the countryside or if it's usually in cities?
Usually in countryside.
Yeah, excellent. Usually in the countryside. So those are the things that make a cottage a cottage. Usually it's quite small. It's usually in the countryside. Usually it has quite a nice garden. Sometimes it will even be quite old. So it won't be a modern building. We would normally describe older buildings as cottages.
And it is small in heights.
Pardon?
It is small in height.
Yeah, often it can have a low ceiling. It'll be quite small. Yeah, usually because older buildings had very low ceilings. Sometimes medieval buildings would have very low ceilings, often because people were shorter a few hundred years ago than they are now. So sometimes we talk about medieval cottages and that were built 500 years ago that people still live in, especially in England. Those are quite common and they have very low ceilings. So Shalaisha, do you have a question? Is your internet working now?
No, ma'am. I don't have any questions.
I just wanted to get one confirmation basically.
Yeah.
So what will be this sentence? Mark and I were working till late night, or Mark and I was working till late night. So which one is correct?
Were. So whenever we talk about more than one person, whenever we could replace the amount of people with they, it's always were. They were.
Okay.
Or we were as well. So it's always were for more than one person. So here it's we because you're including the I. So Mark and I were is the same as saying we were. Yeah. It's only for the singular that we use was. I was, he, she was. But if it's plural, it's always were. Right,
And what about this sentence? If Mark and she was working till late night, or Mark and she were working till late night, I think it will be was, right?
So then if we don't know the person's name, we usually say she first. The reason we put Mark and I is because when we're talking about ourselves, it sounds impolite to put us first. It's a bit like it's polite to say somebody else first, to talk about them first. So that's why we say Mark and I. But if we're talking about other people, we would say she and Mark. If she and Mark do this, so we would normally put the she first. It's a bit of a strange rule. So the pronoun first, we could say if they and Mark do this, if she and Mark does this, yeah. So what was the rest of your question? It was what verb we use.
Yeah, I've got the answer. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
correct.
Okay, yeah. So it would be if she and Mark, and we use the plural as if we said they. So if it's somebody if it's more than one person not including us, we can always replace it with they. So whatever the verb they takes. If she and Mark do that, if they do that, if she and Mark go out, something like that. Okay, excellent, great questions. Okay. So if anyone has any questions in the chat that I haven't yet answered, just... Sarika says, I am pleased to hear that. Excellent, perfect, Sarika. Yeah, I am pleased to hear that. So Suhani, I think I missed your question. How to give the answer, tell me something about yourself. Yeah. So that's a common interview question. tell me something about yourself. So when somebody asks this, they're not looking for something specific. They are giving you an open question. That means you can choose what you mention, what you talk about. So it depends on the situation that you're in. If it's a social thing and you're getting to know people at an art club and everyone says, oh, let's go around and ask everyone, tell me something about yourself. Then you might want to say something interesting. Oh, I speak 3 languages, I've traveled, or I dye my hair blue, something interesting. If it's, or something you think other people might be interested in. But if it's tell me something about yourself at a work interview, then you want to explain something about yourself that shows you're going to be good at the job. So you could say, I'm really hardworking. I love learning new things. I love challenges, things that help me improve. I love working with other people. So it depends on what situation someone says that to you. So you can decide how to answer that. So I hope that answered your question, Suhani. If you have something else, let me know. Okay. So let's finish the rest of the letter. So Mark and I moved into our beautiful cottage last month. I can't believe we finally own our own home. The house is beautiful and we love living in the country. So in the country is a shorthand for saying in the countryside. It has a large back garden with a lot of flowers. Okay, so this is our first sentence, our first conditional sentence.
When
So,
when we will have more time, we will build a patio to have barbecues in the summer. Ma'am, what is
excellent.
what is the pronunciation of patio? Is
Yeah, you got it
patio
right.
or patio?
Patio. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
You got it right.
Okay.
It's a strange word. So that TIO often, without the N, it can be TO, patio. Sometimes if it's an Italian word, it might have the sh sound. You're welcome, Sahani. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay. Yeah, a patio is a deck somewhere which isn't grass, somewhere solid that you can put furniture. So it might be wood, it might be stone, a place that you can have a table and chairs, not on the grass. Yeah, so excellent. Well done. That was a great answer. So that's one of the options. You can say that's when we use will twice. So that's less common in speech, when we're talking in conversation or speech, when we will have more time, but it's grammatically fine. You can also say when we have more time. So you can use the present simple. When we have more time, when we have more time, we will build a patio. So you can choose if you have the will in the first part, in the part of the sentence that has the have, that has the when or the if, but if it's the first conditional, you have to have the will in the second part of the sentence, because we have to show that we're talking about the future. So excellent. So that's the first conditional. Once we have something, the moment in time in the future, when we have something, then we are going to, then we will build a patio. Excellent. Okay, let's look at the next.
When we will have more time, is it correct? Or
Yeah,
if
excellent.
we
When we have
use
more time. Yeah, when we have more time. So that's using the form which is if plus the present simple. You can use if with will as well, if we will have more time, but if with the present simple, if we have, is much more common and works very well. Excellent. Okay, let's look at the next bit. If you, the verb is to come, to see it, you, not be disappointed. So does anyone know if this is the first conditional or the zero conditional? Is it something that's always true
conditional.
or one moment in
First
time?
condition. First
Yeah.
conditional.
Excellent. So first conditional. They're saying to their friend about a meeting in the future. So it's the first conditional. It's a
If you
moment in time.
come to see it, you will not be disappointed.
Perfect, Lendra. Excellent. If you come to see it, you will not be disappointed. Excellent. What would the contraction of will not? What can we put for the instead of will not to make it more informal, more spoken language?
Won't. If
Excellent. Excellent. You won't be
won't be disappointed.
disappointed. You won't be disappointed. Yeah. So that's much more common if you're writing to a friend as well. Okay.
I have one question for the previous sentence. So this is when we have more time, we will be prefer to have barbecues in the summer. So can we remove more if we use directly when we have time? We will build a issue to have barbecues in the summer. Then it also makes sense or not?
Where are you moving the more to?
Yeah, if we remove more, like when we have time, can we use that only?
When we have more time. What's the, I can't hear what the other option is.
When we have time.
Yeah, when we have time, yeah. That's works as well. When we have time, we will know that it's here. Yeah. The meaning is mostly the same. Yeah. Okay, next. Good luck with the move. Quite stressful. If you something be organized, I'm sure you fine. So this is advice. Anyone know if it's first conditional or if it's zero?
If you will organized, or if you will be organized.
If you are organized, I'm sure you will be fine.
Yeah, excellent. That's a little bit better. So here you can. It is the first conditional, but it's also an element of it always being within the zero conditional. It's better here to put the not to use the will in the first part because we're not talking about one moment in time that we know. So it's better to say if you are organized, you will use the will. That's a better. My advice is to do it at the weekend if you have enough time. I have a rule. Every time I get stressed when I'm moving the house, I take a break. Does anyone know if it's zero or 13?
Ma'am, may I?
Yeah?
Every time I get stressed out when I am moving house, I take a break for 10 minutes.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. So this is definitely the zero conditional. So we're using a positive example. Every time I get stressed out when I'm moving the house, I take it. Yeah. So it's definitely the zero conditional. It's a rule that's always true. So we can use the present simple and voice to make that very clear. Try and do the same. Right soon. Excellent. Later. Very well remembered. So I hope that exercise was useful in revising or thinking about the first conditional and zero conditional. And next time we'll have a look at the second and the third conditional. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. Next class will be Sunday, 7 p.m. and it will be on time.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Nice talking to you. Bye bye.